Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I kind of have a little bit of a clip show for you here because there were several different people in this particular hearing that went on today. This was the Intelligence Committee that Adam Schiff is the head of, and I really wanted to play you some of these clips. Now, by now, you may have seen the clips of the Republicans reading a letter to him that asked for his resignation. And so I will play that. I'm going to replay his response, but I couldn't listen to his voice just normally, and I've heard it a couple times, and it's like, no, I don't want to listen to it again, so I did it fast speed, okay? And pretty much he says the same things you would expect him to say, so you've heard it before. I just am going to speed it up so I don't put you through the pain any longer. But there are several other congressmen who spoke up and who said some things that I think are really pertinent to what's going on right now. So I wanted to share them with you. And the panel that they had, a panel of 4, I believe, and one of them was Stephen Hall, who is a former CIA agent. And then we had another one who was the ambassador to Russia. And so it's very interesting how some of their responses are going to feature in. I'm not including a lot of the responses, but pretty much what I did was I went through and I picked out the best ones, and I'm putting them together in one place so you can listen to them all. Sometimes when you watch the news, you only hear the short little clips and you don't get to hear the context around them. So I tried to give a little more context, but I also tried to include the people that really kind of dug at the heart of things in this. So that's what I've got for you, and I'll just play the clips back to back and everything. They are not in any specific order, but I just wanted to get all this information out there and let you hear what they had to say because, like I said, some of them really you want to stand up and cheer. We've got some great guys in there who are really working to make America great again. So there you go. Enjoy the clips.
Today, I now yield to the ranking member for any opening remarks he'd like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today we will hear from a panel on Russian oligarchs. Challenges emanating from Russia have been an abiding topic of this committee for many years. In fact, under the Obama administration, committee Republicans repeatedly warned the administration, both privately and publicly, that more resources and better intelligence were needed to counter numerous threats to our national security from the Kremlin. Our advice, however, was not heeded. The Obama administration's approach to Russia was characterized by misspelled reset buttons, direct promises of more flexibility after Obama's re-election, the scrapping of our missile defense plans in Poland and the Czech Republic at Russia's behest, and the ridicule of then-candidate Mitt Romney for identifying Russia as our primary geopolitical foe. All under an administration that watched helplessly while Russia marched into Ukraine and annexed Crimea. This committee should be focused on intelligence oversight, making sure the IC has resources and authorities needed to protect the United States. We should not be used as a platform to spread false information and bizarre conspiracies. We have unique capabilities and authorities to do crucial oversight work, and now, frankly speaking, that is not being done. This committee was created to oversee the intelligence community, not serve as a tribunal launching frivolous accusations and investigations of one party's political opponents.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yield to Mr. Conaway.
Mr. Chairman, since prior to the inauguration of President Trump in January of 2017, you've been at the center of a well-orchestrated media campaign claiming, among other things, the Trump campaign colluded with the Russian government. Indeed, before the appointment of Robert Mueller as special counsel, you alleged during one of your frequent television interviews that there was, quote, more than circumstantial evidence, quote, of collusion, but that you could, quote, not go into the particulars, close quote. Your repeated public statements, which implied knowledge of classified facts supporting the collusion allegations, occurred at the same time anonymous leaks of alleged intelligence and law enforcement information were appearing in the media. These leaks were often sourced to current or former administration or intelligence officials, appeared to support the collusion allegations, and were purported to be related to ongoing investigations of President Trump and his associates. As you know, the committee has long been aware of and actively engaged in intelligence oversight activities related to Russians' malign activities. As part of our duty to oversee the actions of the Intelligence Community, we conducted a thorough investigation related to the 2016 Russian efforts to interfere in our elections. This investigation included a review of the allegations that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. The committee found no evidence that President Trump or anyone associated with the Trump campaign colluded, coordinated, or conspired with the Russian government. The minority views, which you submitted, were attached to our committee's findings, and yet your views did not provide any evidence to support the claim of collusion. On March 24, 2019, the special counsel delivered his findings to the government, to the special counsel's investigation did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with conspired or coordinated with Russia in its efforts to influence the 2016 presidential election. Special Counsel Mueller's findings are consistent with those of this committee, as well as the public statements of various senators on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Despite these findings, you continue to proclaim to the media that there is significant evidence of collusion. You further have stated you will continue to investigate the counterintelligence issues. That is the president or people around him compromised in any way by hostile foreign power? Your willingness to continue to promote a demonstrably false narrative is alarming. The findings of the special counsel conclusively refute your past and present assertions and have exposed you as having abused your position to knowingly promote false information, having damaged the integrity of this committee and undermined the faith in the United States government and its institutions. Your actions, both past and present, are incompatible with your duty as chairman of this committee, which alone in the House of Representatives has the obligation and authority to provide effective oversight of the U.S. intelligence community. As such, we have no faith in your ability to discharge your duties in a manner consistent with your constitutional responsibility and urge your immediate resignation as chairman of the committee. Mr. Chairman, this letter is signed by all 9 members of the Republican side of the House, of the committee, and I ask unanimous consent to be entered into the record of today's hearing. I yield back.
Without objection, I'm going to turn to our witnesses who are the subject of the hearing today, but before I do, and as you have chosen, instead of addressing the hearing to simply attack me, consistent with the president's attacks, I do want to respond in this way. My colleagues may think it's okay that the Russians offered dirt on a Democratic candidate for president as part of what was described as the Russian government's effort to help the Trump campaign. You might think that's okay. My colleagues might think it's okay that when that was offered to the son of the president, who had a pivotal role in the campaign, that the president's son did not call the FBI. He did not adamantly refuse that foreign help. No, instead, that son said that he would love the help of the Russians. You might think it's okay that he took that meeting. You might think it's okay that Paul Manafort, the campaign chair, someone with great experience in running campaigns, also took that meeting. You might think it's okay that the president's son-in-law also took that meeting. You might think it's okay that they concealed it from the public. You might think it's okay that their only disappointment after that meeting was that the dirt they received on Hillary Clinton wasn't better. You might think that's okay. You might think it's okay that when it was discovered a year later that they lied about that meeting and said it was about adoptions. You might think it's okay that the president is reported to have helped dictate that lie. You might think that's okay. I don't. You might think it's okay that the campaign chairman of a presidential campaign would offer information about that campaign to a Russian oligarch in exchange for money or debt forgiveness. You might think that's okay. I don't. You might think it's okay that that campaign chairman offered polling data, campaign polling data to someone linked to Russian intelligence. I don't think that's okay. You might think it's okay that the president himself called on Russia to hack his opponent's emails, back-channel communications with the Russians to a Russian diplomatic facility. I don't think that's okay. You might think it's okay that an associate of the president made direct contact with the GRU through Guccifer 2 and WikiLeaks and that is considered a hostile intelligence agency. You might think that it's okay a senior campaign official was instructed to reach that associate and find out what that hostile intelligence agency had to say in terms of dirt on his opponent. You might think it's okay that the National Security Advisor designate secretly conferred with the Russian ambassador about undermining U.S. sanctions, and you might think it's okay he lied about it to the FBI. You might say that's all okay. You might say that's just what you need to do to win. But I don't think it's okay. I think it's immoral. I think it's unethical. I think it's unpatriotic. And yes, I think it's corrupt and evidence of collusion. Now, I've always said that the question of whether this amounts to proof of conspiracy was another matter. Whether the special counsel could prove beyond a reasonable doubt the proof of that crime would be up to the special counsel, and I will accept his decision, and I do. He's a good and honorable man, and he is a good prosecutor. But I do not think that conduct, criminal or not, is okay. And the day we do think that's okay is the day we will look back and say that is the day America lost its way. And I will tell you one more thing that is apropos of the hearing today. I don't think it's okay that during the presidential campaign, Mr. Trump sought the government's help to consummate a real estate deal in Moscow that would make him a fortune. According to the special counsel, hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't think it's okay to conceal it from the public. I don't think it's okay that he advocated a new and more favorable policy towards the Russians, even as he was seeking the Russians' help, the Kremlin's help, to make money. I don't think it's okay that his attorney lied to our committee. There's a different word for that than collusion, and it's called compromise. And that is the subject of our hearing today.
Well,
Mr. Ambassador, you are
Gentlemen,
recognized for your opening
Gentlemen,
statement. I will not yield. Mr. Ambassador, you
Gentlemen,
are-
because you just made something to all of us that I think all should get to respond to. If you're going to say we think, you ought to allow us to speak of what we
You can
think.
use your 5 minutes to speak. You attacked me in your opening statement, and
I have not had an opportunity to respond at all, especially to your statements of what we think, because no one over here thinks that. No one over here. You cannot speak for us. You cannot speak for us.
Mr. Turner, you're not recognized. Ambassador McFaul, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, before I get to my questions, Mr. Chairman, let our read in the record. I did so with a heavy heart and with thought and consideration. There's nothing more difficult that we do than trying to hold each other accountable. Our words, our actions have consequences, and so that's simply what we try to do. The litany. Well, let me say this: the emotional reaction you had is certainly expected, but let me be clear: a clear, convincing statement for the record. Nothing in our letter could be interpreted or remotely interpreted as causing you to be able to accuse us of thinking it's okay for that long litany of prepared remarks that you read into the record that you said you were not okay with, and then to imply with the technique that you're very good at that somehow we do. We don't. Our letter has absolutely nothing to do with what President Trump, candidate Trump, campaigns, whatever it is they might have done. Our letter speaks to our concern that the intelligence agency that we seek to oversee, the important role, in fact, unique role that this committee has in that role in Congress is compromised by your continued leadership. And I don't say that lightly. You and I have had a good working professional relationship for over 2.5 years, and it doesn't please me in the least to say that.
Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the witnesses, thank you all. I'm familiar with not all of you, but several of you I am in your long years of service, and I thank you for that service and for being here today. And I do have a list of questions for you, which I'll get to for in a moment. But before I do, I feel like I have to address at least briefly the elephant in the room, and to, as a kind of man-to-man, explain to our chairman why I signed this letter today. I consider myself a fairly soft-spoken person. I don't like conflict. I don't seek after conflict. But again, I think that this deserves an explanation, and that is that the chairman of the Select Intelligence Committee is not just another politician. It's not just someone who is a member of the resistance and may disagree with this president. This individual is in a position of great responsibility and special trust. And that trust can be destroyed if accusations are made without evidence. Last weekend, the Attorney General and Mr. Mueller released their report and a synopsis of those reports. And now, and this is important to make, that some have said that he concluded there wasn't sufficient legal threshold was reached to prove conspiracy or collusion, but that's simply not true. He didn't say we saw evidence, but it wasn't sufficient to reach a legal threshold to prosecute. He said we saw no evidence of collusion. And he even added, despite multiple attempts by the Russians to make contact with the campaign, the House Intelligence Committee found this, the Senate Intelligence Committee has indicated they have found no evidence of collusion. Mr. Mueller found evidence or no evidence of collusion. And yet, just a few days ago, Chairman, you said undoubtedly there is collusion. And I think it's important to note that I would substitute collusion with treason. Because you're not accusing someone of getting a parking ticket or stealing a piece of bubblegum. You are accusing the president of treason, of working with a foreign government and not an ally, not an unknown government entity, a long-time known adversary. And you are saying he has committed high crimes. He is subverting our own lie. He is trying to steal an election. He is destroying the trust of the electoral process and break down faith in democracy. And I don't think you can make that accusation and at the same time say, but we're not going to call for his impeachment. I don't think you can have it both ways. If you truly believe that, I don't know how you could not rise today and say, and he should be impeached, and I will lead efforts to impeach him. Because you can't say that he has committed treason and say, but we're okay with that. To use your phrase, Mr. Chairman, we're okay with that. We'll allow him to stay in office. It has to be one or the other. And that's why I signed this letter today.
Dr. Wenstrup.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. One thing I do want to say from the outset is somebody who is in his first elected office, not my first term, but my first elected office. I'm a doctor, I'm a surgeon. It was not illegal for me to continue seeing patients and operating on them while I was a candidate. But things changed once I became a candidate and there were different rules. I became a member of Congress and there were different rules. Just want to say that for the record. And Ambassador McFaul, I appreciate you talking about the, I call it the instruments of Putinism, if you will. I think that it's what we do need to address. And I want to talk about that in a minute. But I also, we've had morality defined to us today. And frankly, I consider entrapment to be immoral, especially if it's being done by Russians. I think it's immoral for a campaign or a party to which many of our members here have donated to pay a British agent and Russians. Let me point that out. Russians were involved with the dossier to create an unverified, salacious document against the opposing candidate. Okay? Now, I doubt that Putin was unaware that Russians took part in that. That's well documented. But I'm surprised to see the legs that that took. Putin probably never imagined, or maybe he did, that the FBI, the DOJ, possibly the CIA, would focus on the American candidate and their campaign rather than the Russian involvement with this entire thing. To the point of surveillance of the campaign, running people into the campaign, and in my opinion, to try and entrap innocent people from that campaign. We even saw an attempted entrapment on the chairman by some comedians. But with all of this, I'm sure that Mr. Putin looks on with glee as we now have a nation so divided, polarized, as was said here today. It's beyond my belief. And they've gotten away with it. I said in this committee 2 years ago, as the fighting began, which was not there my first term on this committee, by the way, until Mr. Trump won. As the fighting began, I said the Russians are getting everything they want right now. And we have not had discussions of FISA abuses this term. We've not had discussions on the unmasking processes that take place, all of which have raised serious concerns about what is taking place here. We also haven't had discussions on Russian involvement with the dossier. And I don't know how we get back together as a nation and how we become unpolarized, if we will, if we don't address the truth and have true justice and America know what actually took place. So I'm disappointed, as you might imagine, to see all this focus and none on the Russians themselves as they were involved with that entire process from the beginning as having helped to write that dossier. And if Putin was for Trump, what has happened to the Russians that tried to take him down? You've been very eloquent about the power of this man. So I would like to hear anybody who would like to comment on the Russian involvement with this whole process from the beginning as being involved with the dossier.
I could try to speak to that. You're referring to the Steele dossier. I am not aware of, and again, I've been out of service for a number of years now, but I'm not aware of direct Russian involvement in the dossier. I don't rule it out. I'm simply not aware of it.
Well, that's how it's been reported, but we haven't seen anything coming from within ourselves to say yes or no. We're investigating it. Yet that's what's been reported. And let me tell you, we've gone down a lot of paths because of things that were reported that weren't necessarily true. But shouldn't we be trying to look into that? Let me just have your opinion. Does that not, if that's true, doesn't it disturb you?
I think it's absolutely important.
Mr. McFaul, you're shaking your head yes, so I'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely, sir. I have a lot of questions about what the Russians did in 2016 that haven't been answered. That's why I want to read Mr. Mueller's report. I used to work with him. He's a thorough guy. I look forward to reading that. I think we have to know what happened. We have to do the diagnostics properly. And just let me say two things, because you asked for my opinion, so that's why I woke up, okay? I'm not an expert on what happened, but two things I feel really strongly about. National security is not a partisan issue. I worked for the National Security Council. I didn't work for the Democratic Security Council. And I took an oath of office to the United States of America when I became the U.S. ambassador. And when we don't, there are other issues that are done in partisan ways, right? Tax policy benefits some and others, and we can debate about that. You all debate about that. But when it comes to national security, if the Russians attack us, they're not going to just attack the Republicans and leave the Democrats to the side. They're not going to do that. And I hope, I'm sorry to get emotional, but I want us to get back to the national security threats that threaten all of us together.
Thank you. I appreciate that. When I joined the military under a president I didn't vote for, because I put that first. That was my commander-in-chief. I took an oath to defend the United States of America. I couldn't agree with you more, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carson. Mr. Turner.
When Senator Joe McCarthy walked the halls of Congress, people in this nation were transfixed, but they were also appalled. And this body then recognized the danger of unethical abuse of congressional powers. Now, the testimony from Steve Hall today says that he has Vladimir Putin as identified as his primary goal is the weakening of democracy in the United States and the West. Mr. Chairman, I'm asking for your resignation today because I believe you are advancing Putin's work. I believe the chair has abused his power in these processes, and he's misrepresenting the information that we've received in classified sessions. Now, Mr. Chairman, when this body understood that McCarthyism was something to be rejected, it for years watched it. But you are using that playbook. With McCarthyism, we had Russia chasing after Russian communists, and now we have Schiff chasing after Russian collusion and those who would collude. Mr. Chairman, in your opening statements, you attacked in true McCarthy fashion each and every one of this. You stated that you stated what we think. You can't say what we think. It's the lowest form of any argument to attack someone. Now, what we have said is we've come forward and said that we all think that your leadership of this committee is compromised, in part because you behave as if your fellow members of this committee are your enemy. You behave as if the president is also similarly your enemy. And in true McCarthy fashion, you act as though you are the only one who is capable of protecting this nation, and everyone else is a co-conspirator who have suspected intentions. Your response could have been that you're here to protect national security, that you're here to ensure this committee has no leaks, that you're here to ensure that this committee works together, and that you want to have a true bipartisan work to support the international intelligence efforts of our country. Instead, you've shown contempt for your fellow members of Congress. For 2 years, your opening statements have repeatedly attacked the members of this committee, their motives, and their work. You have transformed the staff of this committee so that they are prosecutorial instead of working on issues of national security and intelligence. You have misrepresented to the American people information that we received in classified sessions. And you've had this committee diverge from its goals. That is a danger to our national security. It is a distraction. It causes this committee not to function. When this Congress took a look back at itself and what had happened with Senator Joe McCarthy, it made a commitment that Congress would no longer be abusive in its powers, that it would look to protecting its national security. And Mr. Chairman, your reactions today were in true McCarthyism as you chose to attack us instead of state your commitment to national security. Ms. Conley, did Joe McCarthy advance Russia's communistic goals of separating our country? Did McCarthyism advance democracy, or did it hinder democracy? Did McCarthyism shackle us with a burden of divisiveness rather than cohesiveness in trying to move forward as we look to our adversaries?
Congressman, I'm not the best placed witness to answer your question.
Ambassador McFaul?
I'm also not an expert on McCarthyism. I'm an expert on
I just want
other
your personal opinion.
I do think polarization in our society advances Putin's national interest, as defined by him.
I greatly appreciate you answering that question.
So that's what I had for you on this one. I hope you enjoyed the clips. It's very interesting to see the men that are rising up to stand against this. And they're not from just one state. They're from several different states. And I love seeing it because there are more patriots out there in our government than we think sometimes. And I think the patriots have reached the point where they're going to make sure these people do not walk away from this, that they will be held accountable for what they have done. And Adam Schiff, I think, is at the top of the list. So he is in deep due right now, and I'm going to be anxious to see what happens from here on out. So I wanted to give that to you and let you see what happened this afternoon, kind of in a condensed form, so you didn't have to spend so many hours watching it. So thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you all later.